I never expected trouble when I inherited Grandpa's farm. Not from people wearing suits and hiding behind county seals. Certainly not from bulldozers. 15 acres of undisturbed land-rolling green hills, wildflowers in the spring, a line of cottonwoods whispering along the eastern fence line. It wasn't just property. It was legacy. It was a reminder of the man who taught me to drive a tractor before I could ride a bicycle, the one who raised tomatoes big enough to feed the whole church during the week. I worked as the county's senior building inspector, staring at blueprints, reviewing safety permits, arguing about code violations. But the farm, that was home. Every weekend I left my apartment in town, tossed on my boots, and drove 40 minutes east to tend the vegetable beds and feed the chickens. Peace didn't come easy in the modern world, but it lived out here. So when the trouble came, it didn't arrive with fanfare. It rolled in quietly, like a weed that sprouted beneath the porch steps. It was a Tuesday. Quiet. I was collecting eggs from the coop when I heard the hum of engine slow, deliberate, not the kind of noise that belonged here. I crested the rise by the south pasture, shielding my eyes from the morning sun. That's when I saw them. 3 white trucks, no company logos. A dozen men in neon vests and hard hats swarming around my fence line. Wooden stakes dotted the ground like a land surveyor's graveyard, and standing in the middle of it all, wearing expensive heels and a navy pantsuit that didn't belong anywhere near farmland, was Eleanor Hargrove. I descended slowly, wariness blooming in my chest. "Can I help you?" Eleanor turned with the politician's practiced smile. "Ah, you must be the owner." "I am," I said cautiously. "This is private property. Who are you?" "Eleanor Hargrove," she said smoothly, extending a hand I didn't take. "President of the Metork Estates Homeowners Association." I blinked. "Homeowners Association? What are you talking about? This is farmland. There's no HOA here." She chuckled as if I were the child in this conversation. "According to our records, this parcel was incorporated into Metork Estates as of last month. We're preparing to break ground on a new gas station." A cold knot formed in my stomach. "That's not possible. I never agreed to anything like that." She handed me a folder. "The paperwork is finalized. You're welcome to review it. If you have any legal concerns, I'd advise you to speak with our attorneys." I flipped open the folder, my pulse climbing. There it was, a rezoning application. Stamped and signed. My property, the southern 10 acres, had been reclassified as commercial land for fuel sales and convenience retail. And at the bottom of the form, written in cursive as neat as my own name, my signature. Only I never signed it. Never saw these documents in my life. "This isn't my signature," I said, voice rising. "This is forgery." Eleanor's smile didn't falter, but her eyes narrowed like knives. "You'll want to be careful throwing around accusations like that. Our legal team is extremely thorough. I'm sure there's a rational explanation." A tall man with a clipboard stepped forward. "Ma'am, we have every authorization. This area is already approved for commercial infrastructure. This will soon be the Merck Convenience Center." "Get off my land," I said. "I'm calling the police." "You're welcome to," Eleanor replied. "Sheriff Daniels is on our HOA board." I paused. Of course, in our small county, corruption didn't need to hide. It just wore a badge. I made my decision then. No panic. No shouting. I would play this like a chess game. "You have 24 hours to remove your vehicles and crew," I said evenly. "After that, I file criminal trespass charges." I didn't mention my job title. "Not yet." Eleanor's smile returned, brittle and tight. "We'll be back tomorrow with our surveyor to mark the boundaries. I suggest you review those documents before you embarrass yourself in court." As she walked away, I took out my phone and began taking pictures of every vehicle, stake, clipboard, and set of plans I could see. One stake had MGC stamped into the wood. I didn't know what MGC was, but I'd find out. Back in the farmhouse, I cleared off the kitchen table and laid the documents flat under a lamp. Something was off. The stamps looked right. The seals looked official. But the approval date jumped out at me 3 weeks ago. I was backpacking in the Rockies then. No phone, no email, no way I could have signed anything. That's when the knock came. A sheriff's cruiser sat in my driveway. The deputy who stepped out was unfamiliar, which was unusual in this county. "Are you the property owner?" he asked, unreadable. "I am, 5th generation." He handed me a thick envelope. "Cease and desist order. You're prohibited from interfering with Metork Estates development." I ripped it open. "On what basis?" "Harassment of work crews. Ms. Hargrove filed a complaint this afternoon." I stared in disbelief. "They're the ones trespassing. This is my land." He didn't budge. "Counties granted temporary access for survey and preparation work. Any interference could be construed as obstruction." His radio crackled. He nodded to me and returned to the cruiser. My phone buzzed a moment later. A new text. Back off. "If you know what's good for you." I locked the front door and drew the curtains. Then I pulled out Grandpa's old records from the filing cabinet. Sure enough, I found the original property deed unchanged since 1954. Every inch of the pasture was family land. Then something else, an old envelope. A letter from Grandpa, written months before his death. "Greater than developers have started asking about the southern ridge. Someone mentioned a highway expansion. Don't trust anyone who comes offering big money. There's more going on than they're telling." He'd warned me. And now it was happening. I stood by the window, watching headlights crawl past the property for the 4th time that evening. Eleanor's crew wasn't just developing. They were staking a claim to my land, my silence, and my future. I texted, "Marcos, greater than need you to pull all permits tied to Metork Estates or anything called MGC Holdings. Something's rotten." Marcos replied, "On it. Be careful. You might be kicking a hornet's nest." I didn't care. I had a badge of my own. I had the truth. And I had Grandpa's legacy to defend. Tomorrow I'd stop being polite. Tomorrow I'd fight back. The next morning I woke early, still dressed from the night before. I hadn't slept much. Every creak of the wind sounded like a truck door slamming. Before sunrise, I was on the phone with Marcos, who worked records in the county zoning department. He was smart, honest, and thankfully not one of them. "They're planning to break ground today," I whispered. "They claim to have permits. I need you to check the files for anything involving Metork Estates or a company called MGC Holdings." Marcos was already typing. Metork Estates. Nothing on file. "Wait, there's an application for a MERC. Neighborhood Convenience Center on Route 16. That's adjacent to my south pasture." He paused. "Says it was approved by Commissioner Jackson and co-signed by you? What?" I barked. "Jackson's been on medical leave for months, and I never approved anything." "There's no environmental review attached," Marcos continued, "and no record of a public hearing." I slammed my hand against the kitchen counter. "They forged every document, and they're trying to make it real by building fast. We need to report this." A loud knock at my front door cut him off. Through the curtain, I saw another sheriff's cruiser in the driveway. Not Daniels, not Hargrove. This time it was someone younger. His uniform still stiff like it was new. I opened the door halfway. "Can I help you?" "You the property owner?" he asked, not even trying to smile. "5th generation." "What's this about?" He handed me a manila envelope. "This is a county-issued cease and desist. You're prohibited from obstructing the MERC project. Any further interference could lead to arrest." "Obstructing?" I asked incredulously. I'm defending private property from illegal development. According to county records, he said flatly, you don't have standing to challenge an emergency development initiative. You'll want to take it up with the county executive's office. I flipped the document open. An emergency construction permit had been granted effective immediately. No signatures, no stamped seal. Who authorized this? I asked. He didn't answer. Have a good day, ma'am. As he drove off, my phone buzzed again. Tick. Tock. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I stared at the text, bile rising in my throat. There was no name, no emoji. Just the words and the implication behind them. They weren't bluffing. They were warning me. I stepped out onto the porch and took a long, deep breath. The morning was too still. As if the air itself was holding its breath. In the distance, engines rumbled. I turned to the bookshelf, yanked down Grandpa's land maps again. Clear, defined lines, no gaps, no confusion. There was no legal loophole that allowed what they were doing. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was theft carefully orchestrated, executed with forged signatures, sealed with political protection. And, if I didn't act fast, they were going to take everything my family had biting me mid-morning. I was digging through Grandpa's old metal filing cabinet, fingers stained with dust and ink. I found a thick folder labeled Southridge Do Not Sell. Inside, clipped together with an old brass fastener, were newspaper clippings, survey maps, and a handwritten letter addressed to me never mailed. The paper was yellowed, the penmanship unmistakable, greater than they're planning a highway exit. The feds won't say it outright, but I've seen the markers. Developers want NMGC Holdings offered me double market value. I refused. Told them this land's not for sale. If something ever happens to me, don't trust anything signed without your own hand. And don't let them carve this place into concrete. The letter was dated just 3 weeks before he died of what they called a stroke. I felt the blood drain from my face. Grandpa hadn't trusted them. He'd warned me. And now they were back stronger, bolder, more connected. I turned toward the sound of gravel crunching 3 bulldozers, 2 crew vans, a truck with tinted windows, and Eleanor Hargrove, arms crossed, tapping her foot on my porch. I grabbed my badge, my work ID, and Grandpa's maps. Then I opened the door just enough. You're trespassing again, I said. She shoved a document into my hand. Emergency construction permit, signed yesterday by the county executive's office. We're breaking ground today. I scanned the paper. It had no authorization stamps, no inspection number, no environmental clearance. That's impossible, I said. You need a public hearing, a watershed impact study, and a 10-day notification period, special exemption, she cut in. Section 12.1b under Emergency Infrastructure Authority. If you obstruct, Deputy Hargrove will arrest you. I froze. Hargrove? My brother-in-law, newly promoted. My stomach flipped. The whole family was in on it. I needed time. Time to think. Time to stall. Give me 10 minutes to get dressed, I said. 5, she snapped. The cruise. On the clock. Back in my room, I called Marcos again, barely able to keep my voice down. They're here, with bulldozers and a bogus permit. Don't let them start, he hissed. Once they dig, they'll file a vested interest claim. It'll be harder to stop them legally. How am I supposed to stall them when the sheriff's in there? Pocket? Then play your card, he said. Remind them who you are. I clipped on my county badge and stepped outside. The crew was already unloading equipment. Eleanor stood waiting, smug and radiant in her power. I need to verify credentials. For every crew member, I said, and see safety certifications for heavy equipment. Her brow furrowed. This isn't your jurisdiction. I held up my ID. Actually, it is. I'm Senior County Building Inspector. No commercial construction begins without my verification, especially. Not on a Class A watershed, she blinked, just for a moment. Then her jaw tightened. One of the crew looked uncertain. Ms. Hargrove, we can't dig without water permits. That's a major violation. Eleanor turned red. We have full authorization. My phone buzzed again, Marcos. I glanced at the screen. Greater than fake. Permit doesn't exist. Jackson never signed it. Issue stop order. I took a deep breath. As county inspector, I am issuing a stop work order under County Code 35.7. Violations carry civil fines up to $10,000 per day. Any unauthorized excavation will be reported to the State Environmental Board. The construction foreman stepped back. We need to pause until this is cleared. I'm not risking my license. Eleanor's voice cracked. Pack it up. She glared at me with barely concealed rage. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. No, I said, stepping forward. It's just beginning. As the last bulldozer retreated and Eleanor fumed beside her idling SUV, I snapped photos of everything: equipment, license plates, crew members' badges. Every detail could be evidenced later. My heart was still racing, but I stood steady on that porch like my grandfather used to during storms. Inside, I called Marcos again. We stopped them. I issued the order, he exhaled. Thank God. I've never seen permits vanish this fast from the internal system. Something's being deleted or rewritten in real time. We have to make copies of everything right now. I'm on my way. 30 minutes later, we met at the county records office. I brought my laptop, camera, and every physical record I could carry. Marcos greeted me with a grim look and a flash drive. You're not going to like this, he said. I found something. Worse than fraud. I found the company that's bankrolling all of this. MGC Holdings LLC. He opened a property transfer map. They've been quietly buying up land all around your farm. Strip parcels. Zoning reclassifications filed under fake neighborhood associations, none of them real HOAs, just fronts. I leaned over the map and pointed. These survey markers, MGC was printed on them. That's the same shell company. He nodded. They just filed plans for a major retail truck stop, gas station, and warehouse complex. My blood went cold. They need highway access, I whispered. And that access runs straight through my south pasture. Marcos pulled up the ownership. Filings for MGC Holdings. They'd masked their registration through a tangle of anonymous trusts, but the names on the final page turned my stomach. Thomas Hargrove, County Executive Richard Hargrove, Eleanor's husband Catherine Everett, head of the County Planning Commission, all three. Directly involved. They've rigged the system from every angle, Marcos muttered. They control land approvals, environmental sign-offs, sheriff's enforcement hell. Even court filings go through Hargrove's cousin at the clerk's office. I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. That fake permit they brought this morning, it wasn't incompetence. It was strategy. They expected me to fold. Marcos looked around the records office, suddenly wary. We need to copy everything. If they know we're onto them, these files could disappear. We loaded documents onto flash drives and backed them up to a cloud server I kept for inspections. Just then, the records clerk approached, wringing her hands. Someone was just in here asking for you, she said. Man in a suit. Said he was from the executive office. Left in a black car. Marcos turned and pointed toward the lot. That's him. Through the window, I saw Thomas Hargrove, county executive, shaking hands with Eleanor beside a glossy black SUV. My stomach twisted. We weren't just facing corruption. We were facing Organized criminal activity inside our own government. We slipped out the back entrance of the records office. I dropped Marcos at a neutral site, then drove straight to a retired lawyer I trusted in Santa Fe, Audrey Nilsson, a brilliant woman with no ties to our county. She wasn't surprised when I laid everything out: photos, emails, forged permits, land deeds. Classic land conversion fraud, she said. Layered shell companies, forged rezoning. They're rushing development so fast the legal system can't keep up. Can we stop it? She nodded slowly. You have standing and you have evidence. But you'll need to escalate beyond the county. If you stay local, they'll bury you. She prepared a motion for injunctive relief with the state environmental court and helped me draft a formal complaint to the New Mexico Attorney General. I also filed a whistleblower tip with the EPA, since the development violated watershed protections, and then, just to be sure, I emailed everything to 3 newspapers and 2 investigative journalists under a pseudonym. Let them try in silence. Me now. The next morning my phone rang. Caller ID, blocked number. I let it go to voicemail, then played it on speaker. Greater than this is Thomas Hargrove. I believe you're confused about what's best for this county. I'd like to meet professionally, of course. My office. 9 a.m. We can discuss a resolution. Resolution. That word said everything. I showed up early. Hargrove's office. Looked like a governor's mansion, a walnut desk the size of a dining table. Gold pens, bottled water chilled in crystal glassware. Eleanor sat beside him like a smug first lady. Richard Hargrove lounged near the window with crossed arms. Let's be civil, Thomas said, hands folded. You're a smart woman. We don't need to be adversaries. You forged permits. You tried to steal private land. You threatened me. You've made accusations, he replied. But you're young. I understand. This project will bring in millions jobs, infrastructure, growth, and ruin a watershed, destroy farmland, and bury a century of family legacy. Richard stepped forward. We can offer you compensation and a seat on the board. Eleanor smirked. Or maybe a promotion in your department. I leaned across the desk. Every piece of evidence you think you hid is now in 3 separate hands: legal hands, press hands, federal hands. Thomas's face hardened. You just buried your career. No, I said. You buried yours. 2 days later, the court injunction arrived. All construction halted. That same day, the 1st. Local reporter published an expose. County executive accused in land scheme. Inspector blows whistle on gas station fraud. The story exploded. The state attorney general opened a formal investigation. The EPA dispatched a team within 48 hours. The New Mexico Board of Inspectors suspended all permits tied to Matork Estates. Catherine Everett, head of the planning commission, was arrested, first caught deleting permit data. Richard Hargrove fled the state. He was later caught in Nevada trying to withdraw funds from a frozen trust account. Deputy Hargrove was charged with witness intimidation and obstruction of justice. And finally, Thomas Hargrove resigned under public pressure moments before he was formally indicted for forgery, conspiracy, and racketeering. As for Eleanor, she disappeared. Rumor said she was hiding in Arizona under a different name. Her smile wiped clean by arrest warrants and federal subpoenas. Epilogue, the land stands in. The weeks that followed, I returned to the farm. The chickens still clucked. The garden still grew, and the grass on the south pasture, untouched by cement, swayed free in the wind. Built a tall wooden sign and hammered it into the field. Greater than private property, family land since 1892. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Inspectors live here. I still work inspections. But now, I'm also helping rewrite policy statewide, ensuring no future inspector is ever put in a position like mine. Sometimes power doesn't come from a title. It comes from knowing when to stand your ground, no matter who stands against. You dot, and when I walk those hills at dusk, I feel my grandfather beside me still watching, still mourning, still proud.